This is my adventure with the Raspberry Pi 2. Raspberry Pi 2 comes in a box, looks like this. It's very small, and this came with a starter kit that basically had every type of connection that you needed to use the Raspberry Pi. Out of the box, it looks like this. Here's a close-up. This has a quad-core processor, 1 gig of RAM, so I mean it's a pretty powerful computer, and you can see all of the different connections that it has. It has a bunch of USB ports, 4 of them, an Ethernet port, an HDMI port, a micro USB port, even has a camera connection. Here it is out of the bag, and in this picture you can see the case that it comes with, the micro USB card that you need. It also came with some heat sinks, which I installed on the 2 chips that you see there. And there's both heat sinks installed. I then put the Raspberry Pi in the case. You don't want to hit any of the circuitry on the circuit board, so it's a good idea to put the Raspberry Pi in a case, and here it is in the case. Here's a side view that shows the USB ports and the Ethernet port. You turn it around and we have our HDMI connection, our micro USB connection, and our power connection. The micro USB card fits in the back right there, and there it is all installed, and I hooked this up via HDMI to my monitor. This also came with a Wi-Fi adapter, Wi-Fi USB adapter, which will grab the internet, so that's really awesome that you don't have to string an Ethernet cable to hook up to the internet. So here it is, hooked in. The power's on. You can see the little red light in the corner. And when I first turned it on, this is the screen that it came with. So we have an operating system called Raspbian, and you can partition the SD card if you want. And what I did is I connected my mouse and my keyboard via USB to make this work, and I installed the operating system Raspbian. So there's my connections with the keyboard and the mouse. I checked the Raspbian and hit install. So now what it's doing is it's extracting the files, which is the operating system that the Raspberry Pi uses. It's kind of like Ubuntu. So right now, as it's installing, it's telling you about Scratch, which is a great program that students can use to learn how to program. And that's a program that's pre-installed with Raspbian. As it continues to install, it tells you to log in. There's the username and the password that you need. And it's there we're talking about the command lines, and here it's just kind of telling you, what it's going to look like. And it looks a little bit, I mean, in my opinion, like Windows. And if you've ever used Ubuntu or Linux, it has similar features. Okay, so there it is finishing up, and when it finished up, it went crazy. It started to go through all of the tests that a computer does on boot up. Once it went through and it scrolled through a bunch of lines of checking, this screen came up. And here you can change the settings to the operating system. There really wasn't anything that I changed on here. You can overclock this, and that's number 7. And a lot of people do overclock them, so they will run faster and you can do more things with them. You are risking heating, heat being a main factor when it's doing that. So you need to be kind of careful and know what you're doing because you don't want to overheat the device. Once you go through all of the different settings, you get a screen looks like this and says, do you want to reboot? And I hit yes, and then this screen comes up. Once it starts to boot up, it goes through the same testing process and it looks to see what USB devices are connected, if they're, and what is connected to the computer. Once it's done, this is what your screen looks like. And there's a whole bunch of different things in the menu, so let's look at that real quick. In the programming portion of the menu, we've got Mathematica, Python 2, Python 3, Scratch, Sonic Pi, and Wolfram. We go over to the internet. It has pre-programmed in for the Pi Store, the Raspberry Pi resources, and so programs and apps that you want to add onto this, you can quickly click that and go there. And there's also the web browser. Kids will love this. Minecraft, Pi, Python games. You go to accessories and it has the basic accessories that most computers have, and so you can see those there. The preferences tab has the settings for your monitor, the keyboard and the mouse, and another important one, the Wi-Fi. Once you plug in the Wi-Fi adapter right there, you go to the Wi-Fi configurator and enter in your password if you have access to a wireless network. That was a seamless connection, and as you can see here, I'm connected to Google. The next thing I wanted to do is in the documentation talked about adding XBMC Media Center, which right now is codenamed Kodi. That's the latest media center. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can load that on. I wanted to go into the terminal and try to grab it that way. So you go to the terminal, it looks like this. So this is the command lines that Windows has, and also on a Mac computer. You can go into the terminal and look for things and look at your settings, and it's a way that you can install things or change settings on your computer. So the first thing I did is I typed the line in that was in the book that came with the Raspberry Pi. And so I type that in, you hit enter, and as you can see, now I'm in the file that has the sources in it. And so then I typed in the next command line, and you can see it's going to a website. So I type that in. There it is again. And this is where I ran into the problem. The book did not tell you to write in the word sudo, S-U-D-O, which gives you access to actually write onto the operating system to change the files. And so what I had to do is I had to research that and look that up. And as you can see, I was having another problem, because if you look in the next line of code where it says apt and it's going to a key server to grab the files that you need, you can see that down the bottom it says can't open, no writable keyring found, error reading, processed, 0. So there was obviously a problem. So I kept messing with it and figured out that that one you also had to type in sudo, and sudo is just something that you type in the command line on the Raspberry Pi when you are kind of like the administrator and you are making changes or writing the programs into the operating system. So that one, as you can see, worked. It grabbed the public key from this website that Michael Gorvin has set up to grab the media center. So there's a bunch of lines of commands started to come in, and as you can see, it started to download and grab a bunch of the files. After it grabbed all of those install files, I typed sudo again. So sudo git install Kodi, and Kodi is just the code name for the media center, and that is the latest release. The one in the book was just having you get the last version of XBMC. So on this one, on this command, I typed in the newer version, and it grabbed the newer version of the media center. As you can see here, it started to grab the package, and it started to install. I hit yes, and then it started to unpack everything, and that took a little while to grab all the files that it needed. So after that, I did have to go and change, let's see, in the advanced options, I had to go and change the memory, and it has to use 128 instead of 64. And then there it is, installed Kodi right there. This is a great media center if you want to stream movies that you have saved, like on a hard drive. And there are also add-ons where you can watch live TV, you can record TV, you can stream movies. There's a lot of things that you could do, and a lot of people actually use this in place of a cable box. So that was cool. I got that working. I actually use this media center on my TV at home. So it was cool to see that this little Raspberry Pi could run it and run it seamlessly. The next thing I want to do is I want to look at Scratch, and this is pretty cool because Scratch is already programmed into the operating system. It's already there. It's already an application that's installed, and once students set up the Raspberry Pi, they could now get into some programming, and this is just one of the things that they could program. And here we have Scratch, and it starts off with this cat. You can change anything that you want on this visually. And if you look at the left, this is kind of like some of the things that students do with Hour of Code, where they grab the coding blocks, and a lot of apps on the iPad or apps on the computer on the internet teach kids to code with these coding blocks. So I just grabbed some of the coding blocks and started to mess with coding with Scratch. The Raspberry Pi was very cool to learn how to use. I did have to look some things up to get it to work how I wanted, but I mean, out of the box it worked pretty well, and I think is a good way to teach students not only about the software side of things but about hardware and how to troubleshoot and to help them see the different connections that computers have that they may not even know about. I think that this could be a useful tool in the classroom to teach them technology standards, but also teach them how to problem solve and troubleshoot. And then you can get into coding different things and coding games. And with Scratch, you can share your games or you can share your code And the documentation that comes with the Raspberry Pi does teach you how to code a simple game that's basically a Nintendo game. So this is pretty cool, and I would love to get some of these for my classroom.